It seems that this little mask is really wreaking havoc in our economy. Well, obviously, it's not the mask that's the problem. It's all the viruses and the sicknesses. I mean, have you ever seen so much sickness in your life? I gotta tell you, every time someone sneezes, I'm like, okay, back off from me. Well, it's not a laughing matter. In fact, it's quite serious. And so the question is, how do we do business? How do we do trainings? How do we meet without getting everyone in the room who might be sick, because we don't know if that sneeze is because, they're allergic to my fabric softener or they've caught something I'd rather not have. In this video, we're going to look at two areas. The first area is we'll examine exactly how do you do virtual meetings or trainings in an effective manner. I'll give you 4 tips there. And then secondly, we'll talk about Whole Training Solutions Institute, what we call our Instructor Anywhere model, and some advantages to that. Let's look at your meetings at your trainings so that we can get rid of these and do it effectively. That's hilarious. The mask literally stuck to the camera. 4 tips to effective meetings and even in-house trainings via technology. Number 1, ask more questions. We've all sat on the phone calls. We've all even sat on the WebEx sessions or Zoom sessions where we turn our camera off and turn everything else off in our brains and sit there and think to ourselves, will this person love their heart ever shut up? We want these sessions to be more engaging. How are they more engaging? We engage people. Ding, ding. We engage people by asking them questions. So when you kick off the session, say, look, I need your input. This is more collaborative than just me talking. And then you ask them questions. Best way to do that? Keep a list of the attendees somewhere where you can see it and just simply go down the list and say, Janine, when it comes to this area, talk to me about, and ask them a question. Go down your list, call on Paul or Sam or Felicia, or you get the idea. What you do is you ask more questions than make statements. The key is this. A lot of times, though you've planned the presentation, though you've planned the meeting, they'll fill in more information than you think, and now they're engaged. They're engaged because, number 1, they have buy-in, and number 2, it's just like when you're a kid in school. You don't know when the teacher's going to call on you. Second way to be more engaging in a virtual meeting or a virtual training session, shorter sessions. Remember the kid? Those of us who are old enough, you got to make the bun shorter. Thank you, Oscar Mayer, for that commercial. Well, you got to make the meetings shorter, for crying out loud. Please don't keep people in virtual sessions for like 3 hours. They were done in the first 30 minutes. Research is showing us, as far as training, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, that 90-minute sessions are really kind of the way to go. So shorter meetings. If you think, well, we typically meet an hour, I would cut that in half, or at least trim off 30, well, that would be half, trim off 20 minutes of it. Shorter sessions. What you could also do is this. A shorter main session, but then you let people break off into maybe the small chat rooms on the virtual setting, or if there are people together in smaller settings, maybe they meet and then you come back together. However you can break it up in smaller chunks, it's going to be more effective. Third, the whiteboard is your friend. Now look, we've all written on these virtual whiteboards and it looks like we're back in kindergarten and we can't, what was that accent? And we can't quite write. But the whiteboards will make it more effective. How? We feel like we're sitting there with you live in the meeting, though we can't. Insert cough, cough, sneeze, sneeze. Now, maybe you're uncomfortable, fair enough, using the whiteboard on the computer. I've been there. So what do? I'm glad you asked. You put a whiteboard behind you. It's that simple. Now, you want to make sure your camera angle works, right? So that you're not writing and people are like, Stan, that's backwards. But I have done sessions where literally behind me, I'll have a white chart or I'll have a whiteboard in which they can see me write as I'm talking. It's actually quite simple. 4th tip, you do a little more prep time before the virtual meeting and you share responsibilities. Watch how this works. Instead of you talking the whole time, you get other people to talk. Now, we talked about asking them questions, but better yet, why don't you let other team members carry responsibilities for the meeting? Now, all the pressure's off you and some pressure's on them, but they are engaged in the meeting because they have shared responsibility. And those who are listening and part of the meeting They're wondering, well, who's next on the agenda? And maybe Carol will be sharing today, or maybe insert name. Shared responsibility means people engaged. Now, if you have smaller teams of maybe 5 or 6, then give everybody a responsibility in a meeting to report something or to give an update, and then you can engage them in one-on-one dialogue. Don't miss what I just said. You can engage them in one-on-one dialogue. Well, what does that mean? Glad you asked. That means as they're sharing their stuff, you are kindly interrupting them and saying, oh, wait a minute, can you give us more there? Or, wow, that's a really good tip. Or, okay, so you're telling us this. Now it's a one-on-one conversation, and everyone is involved as they listen to you. Think Oprah. If you don't know what I mean, go watch Oprah do her interviews. So that leads us to our second area, Instructor Anywhere. Question, how can you do training if you can't get people in the room? Look, the edge on technology right now is crazy. Everything from virtual reality to augmented reality to just basically virtual training sessions like we've been doing for years. Except that whole training, we've taken the last 1.5 to 2 years to say, how can we make virtual training sessions, I don't know, engaging and worth people's time and money? And we figured out a system. There's 3 areas I want to share with you just real quick about our Instructor Anywhere model, so that in the coming days, depending on what happens with all the cough, cough, flu, flu, sneeze, sneeze, we can still meet your needs as our clients. Number 1, we do smaller groups. So instead of putting 17 people on a virtual training call, we do smaller groups. We maybe 4 or 5, depending on the need, depending on the, all the objectives, 4 or 5 people. Now that gives me a chance, or even a co-instructor, 2 of us, to engage with them at a much deeper level. What does that mean? If you have less people, there's more time for questions, there's more time for engagement, and more time for reinforcement, and more time for things to be remembered. Second, we're doing smaller amounts of time. Now, most studies show us that 90 minutes, that's about maximum for virtual settings. Do you remember the old days? You throw 17 people in a room for 8 hours and then couldn't figure out why no one remembered anything? So we're doing smaller sessions. Watch how this works. Let's say we're doing a presentations training course. Those training courses typically take a minimum of 1 full day, if not 2 full days. So what do? Well, maybe we take 4 people out of the 12 you want trained, and we spend 90 minutes or 60 minutes with them on how to open a presentation. We coach them, we watch them do videos, we have a great 60 minutes. Those 4 people leave to go about their day, and we bring in 4 more people. And we do the same session that we just did, but with 4 more people. Repeat process. In fact, we could do that in the morning, and then our first morning group can come back in the afternoon for another hour on how to secure your credibility as a public speaker or deal with nerves. You see, we do smaller sessions, smaller people, we just repeat it more, which is, yes, it's more work for us as a company, but it gets the job done, and it's more rewarding for you as our client. Third benefit, it decreases your money. Look, I love what I do, but sometimes the traveling costs can get in the way. Sometimes the handout costs can get in the way. Sometimes just the cost of the day rate can get in the way. Well, with our Instructor Anywhere model, we decrease the rate, you increase people over a small amount of time, it saves you money. That's always a win. So, how do you find out more information about Instructor Anywhere? I'm glad you asked. You contact us at wholetsi.com. We have a contact page, or you can just see an email right about there, and a phone number will be somewhere. I don't know where that editing will kick in. But you can call us, you can email us, and we'll be glad to do at obviously, as you know, it's no cost to talk with us. We'll talk about your needs. We'll look at your objectives, and we'll say, yes, this will work in a virtual environment, or maybe it won't. 9 times out of 10, it probably will. And the great news is, based on this video, you can still do meetings, you can still do in-house trainings, we can still work with you and not wear this. Because, if you wear this during a virtual session, you're probably overreacting.